that survives and thrives. And that is the fierce behavior of the adult female of that species when she senses that there is a threat to her cubs. That whether it's the mama bear or the tiger or the lion. Do you know that even among the hyenas, the adult female hyenas encircle their babies, encircle the cubs while they're feeding, and will not let the adult males of that species anywhere near the food until the cubs have been fed? Surely the women of America could do better than the hyenas. And the fact that collectively, not in terms of our hearts are good. And I know that the heart that draws us to a place like this today is good. But we have to ask ourselves, at what point, whether you're in therapy or you're at a festival like this, at what point do you stand in that place which is not comfortable? Do you stand in that place which is not comfortable and not turn away? Because if a countercultural movement, such as this, at least externally represents here today, is one, I asked earlier, I said, is there anything political going on here? And I was told, no, these are just people who are ready to transcend. And let me be very clear once again about that difference between transcendence and denial. Because if the countercultural movement in 2011 is one in which it is deemed for whatever reason acceptable to look away from the fact that tremendous amounts of unnecessary human suffering occur on this planet and in this country for no other reason than that so a relatively few people on this planet and in this country can have all the money they want. That is not service. It is not countercultural. It is the epitome of being co-opted by the very culture that we seek to counter. Now, you might say to me, well, what do you want us to do? I don't know what you're supposed to do. None of my business what you're supposed to do. But I'm asking you, as Jesus said to the disciples the night before the crucifixion in the Garden of Gethsemane, please do not go to sleep. Do not go to sleep in the hour of my agony. Remain awake. That's what they do to you. They put you to sleep. The system would love this festival. The system would love this festival because it's not saying fuck you to anybody. And there's a sense that that is somehow spiritual. There's a sense that that is somehow spiritual. And I believe deeply that, as the Course in Miracles says, look at the crucifixion, but do not dwell on it. I'm not saying let's dwell on what's bad, because if you dwell on what's bad, then it's true. That is, you just focus on it and make more of it. But to not look at it at all. To not look at it at all. There's not the divine feminine about that. The divine feminine, if there was a starving child here, somebody tell me, if there was a child here, or if anyone, God forbid, let's just talk about our deep humanity. Let's say right here, right now, God forbid, somebody had a heart attack or something. Well, the fact that I'm speaking up here would be irrelevant. Somebody would yell and say, is there a doctor here? We would all get deeply human very quickly, wouldn't we? Are you with me? Now, this is an interesting thing about our country. If you look at I always say that if I'm on an airplane somewhere, anywhere in the world, I love to sit next to an American. Characterologically, we're cool people, and we care. We're not, we're human beings, and there's a spunkiness, and there's a coolness. But our collective capacity for denial and grandiosity is frightening and perilous. So if you have, like we're a country where if you have one little girl who falls down a well, the whole country holds its breath until, is she okay? Did we get her out? And as I said before, if one child or one person here was in trouble, everybody knows, from the organizers of this festival to everybody who is here, everybody would get very human very quickly, and we would just help that person, wouldn't we? Of course, that's what we would do. However, something happens when a problem becomes too big. And that is the issue now with the Vietnam War compared to the permanent military machinery of the United States at that time. People in the 1960s had a historical memory of a time when America was not making war. We had a historical memory. There had been World War II, and then there was this gap, and there were many underlying and covert things, I'm sure. But then all of a sudden there was a war, and so we felt the difference. What has happened, and what is happening, my fear is, for too many younger people, even at this festival, is too many people in America today don't even have a historical memory of a time when it was not that way. And that's why I, as a grandmother, am here to speak. That's why we hear something now like $700 billion spent every year on defense, and it kind of goes past us. We are desensitized. You know, just to give you a few stories from the old tribe, you know, during the 1960s, during the Vietnam War, at that time, you know, today when you have reporters who go over to the Iraq War, you've heard of embedded journalists. You know what embedded means? You know what? This is a euphemism. You know what it means? We're not going to let them take whatever pictures they want to take. We're going to take them where we want them to go. That's what embedded means. So what happened with the Vietnam War, and this is another issue also that's parallel to that. During the 1960s, we saw, they were on newsreels. We saw the horror. We saw the napalming. We saw it on television. And we also saw the bodies coming back. Now, the system has learned from its so-called failures. Okay, so today, reporters are quote-unquote embedded, which means they see only what we want them to see. And also, starting back in the Clinton years, and this has been a big political thing that's controversial even now, we don't want them to see the bodies. Because, why? Because when we see something horrible, we care. And so what's happened is that there's a certain way of living in this country that has been guaranteed to us. And you and I'm not saying we shouldn't be grateful for our many blessings. I'm very grateful for our many blessings. We should be grateful for our many blessings. I'm just saying we should be responsible because of those many blessings. Women here, do you realize what would happen to women in Afghanistan if they were dressed anywhere near like you're dressed, anywhere at all? Do you know what would happen to those women? And the men couldn't do anything to stop it, because a woman in Afghanistan, there's a wonderful book right now about a woman named Gail Lemon, and it's called The Dressmaker of Kirkana. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it exactly correctly. They're talking about the women under the Taliban, where if a woman is in her burqa and she would be looking to see the peaches or the pears at the stall, the fruit stall, to feed her family, and she puts her hand out because she wants to look at the pears, because it would be a big deal. She's going to spend money. Her wrist shows. Too much of her wrist shows. And this gives the officer of vice, etc., moral vice, the chance to come and cane her. And any man who would dare to complain and say, don't touch her, look what that does to men, by the way, would know that he would be beaten, so nobody even tries. Now, we could talk about, you know, the horror of them. What does that mean? Should we be in Afghanistan? Should we not? Etc. Once again, I'm asking questions here and asking that we not go to sleep to the questions. I myself am not providing answers. I wouldn't claim to have them. Are you with me? But for what it does on our inside, this is what Gandhi called soul force, satyagraha. And that's why I like the organization Amnesty International, that we don't go to sleep about this. That it is not genuinely countercultural if we're so in tune with the fun part that we are not bearing witness to the agony of anyone. And that's what I meant by fuck you. I don't mean to any people. I meant to some aspect of ourselves which will take all kinds of faces, sometimes even convincing us that we're making a stand when in fact we're making no stand at all. Does that make sense? Now, at this point in our history, what does this mean for us as Americans? We have, you know, this idea of the divine feminine. I heard that the Dalai Lama said that if the planet is going to be saved, it's because of Western women. Well, on one hand, that's lovely that he said that. On the other hand, we can figure that out by ourselves. On the other hand, it is a calling for each and every one of us, I believe, men and women. Men and women, regardless of any aspect of our sex or our sexuality. I always say about gay men, you might not sleep with us, but you cannot ignore us. And the male and female, the masculine and feminine, both within us and within our society, are coming together now for an act of procreation that is more stunning than any that has ever occurred. And that is not the procreation just of bodies. The younger people in this room or in this area who are still in your childbearing years, that's a very beautiful thing. It's very necessary, and I hope you have fun doing it, because the planet obviously needs to procreate the human species in order for the species to continue. However, at the same time, There are those of us who are not in our childbearing years anymore, or who are gay, or whom whatever, or even many gay people obviously are having children, but for whom the biological partnership of a man and a woman is not the primary procreative act. But that doesn't mean we're not coming together to create new life. The consciousness is the new womb. But in order to create that new life, I think we must be very clear about what needs to die. And the divine feminine does that. The divine feminine is not a woman who is willing to just have the system, no matter what face the system is taking, pat her on the head and say, don't worry, even if it's using this new age language, if you just be in the light, honey. You just be in the light while we bomb whoever we want to bomb. You just be in the light, okay? While whoever has to have their part of the planet desecrated has their part of the planet desecrated. You just stay in the light, honey, while this tribe or that tribe gets decimated. You just be in the light, honey, while we take genetically modified foods wherever we want to. Do you know when the Monsanto organization recently went to Haiti? Haiti. Think how poor they are in Haiti. Think how much they need the food in Haiti. But do you know the Haitians rose up to Monsanto to say no?